Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 157. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who's liked, shared, commented, who has given us guest suggestions, who has written reviews and rated the show. All your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. I also want to take this time to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment provides first-class weight rooms and has earned an exceptional reputation of providing the finest quality, design, and customer service. Being a direct manufacturer, the team at Samson brings full customization capabilities and not only branding, but in custom equipment needed to execute your big project. From racks, plates, barbells, flooring, dumbbells, benches, storage, and much more, Samson equipment is durable and made to order from premium grade materials, all built from scratch, start to finish. Samson Equipment provides professional weight room solutions for all your strength and conditioning needs. So see the Samson standard for yourself and learn more at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. Cerberus is an organization that puts the athlete first and actively works towards providing the best quality gear at an affordable price. Owned and operated by active lifters, Cerberus has quickly evolved into a global brand symbolizing quality and trust. Their ever-growing product range is used by the top athletes around the world at the highest level competition, and every single Cerberus Strength product has been designed with performance in mind with the highest attention to detail. So if you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and strongman equipment, be sure to check out CerberusStrength.com and use promo code STRENGTH_game to receive an extra 10% off your next order. I also want to thank our sponsor, Sport Kilt. The kilt is a tradition dating back centuries, worn by nobles, military, and fashionistas. The kilt has been through it all, at times banned, at other times celebrated. And for over 25 years, Sport Kilt has been striving to perfect their version of the Scottish classic to create the ultimate garment of fashion and function. Check out the full line of kilts and join the kilt life at sportkilt.com and be sure to use promo code TSG to save on your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Colton Krueger. Colton is a sports performance coach at William & Mary. Joining Tribe Athletics in 2024, Krueger oversees training for the baseball, men's and women's soccer teams, in addition to assisting with football. Prior to William & Mary, he was a graduate assistant sports performance coach at Youngstown State University from 2022 to 2023, where he worked with the football, track and field, and men's tennis programs. He started his coaching career as an intern at Marquette in 2020 before earning additional sports performance coaching experience at the University of Oregon with the football team in 2021 and the University of Wisconsin in 2022 before returning to Marquette as a paid intern again. A former collegiate player at Hillsdale College, he continues to stay active himself in the weight room. He continues to train and compete now in Olympic weightlifting, where he has had success competing at the U25 Nationals, securing a podium finish in 2025 and earning a qualifying total for the American Open Finals. He's an avid lifter and enjoys skiing, golfing, traveling, and watching sports when he's not training in the weight room. Like I said, I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Colton Krueger. What's going on, everybody? Today, we got a little bit of free time on the weekend, so I'm excited to kind of sit down and chat with Coach Colton Krueger. How are you doing today, man?
Doing great. How you doing, Nick?
I'm good. We got chatting a little bit ahead of time, working on both of our kind of garage gyms, yours back home, like where it's nice and cold in Wisconsin, and then mine over here in Florida. So a little bit different, but I'm excited to get you on today and maximize our kind of lower day. So let's get this thing rolling, man. How did you kind of on the topic of training and like garage gyms and stuff like that? How did you kind of get started, like training, eventually getting into strength sports, into competing in Olympic weightlifting, which you're doing on the national stage at this point in time?
Yeah, I feel like that's the perfect segue talking about garage gyms in Wisconsin. So I originally played a lot of sports growing up. The goal was always to do something collegiately, whether that was football or wrestling were kind of my main two things. And really, just at a young age, was trying to figure out what do I need to do to accomplish that. And in the process, around I believe seventh grade, I got into lifting with one of the football coaches. And then from there, it was that kind of over time, without me realizing it, became the main thing that I enjoyed the most, doing some powerlifting meets early on in like high school, while also training for sports. And then once I was done with my collegiate career, that became the next thing was, well, what do I do afterwards? Now I'm done with this thing that's been my identity for a long time. And lifting was always something I enjoyed in the background. So I was able to make that the main piece, and it's something that I've been able to hang on to this whole time with a busy schedule. Becoming a college strength coach, it's nice when your office is a gym, and I can go out there and it applies to everything I'm doing with my athletes. So, been able to, but thankful that I'm able to do that for a lot of years and continue to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's a great kind of like segue, like being good and familiar with what you're actually going to program for your athletes, inevitably like having some skin in the game and going out and training, but also like enjoying what you're doing is also like a bonus. And it's like it's a double-edged sword of having that office like connected to the weight room where that's also where the hub of everybody comes in to train. And you got to find a little place to kind of escape sometimes when you need to like throw the hammer down and train hard and people just want to chit chat. It's always an interesting kind of spot because it's the place where everything's happening.
Absolutely, a lot of foot traffic. It's good. It's a place that all the student athletes, coaches want to come hang out. That's awesome because it means it's a good environment. But yeah, a lot of early morning or um, less ideally late night training sessions to make it happen. Try not to train right in the middle of the day. You're kind of asking for it.
Yeah, it's always kind of bookend, unfortunately. Like those midday lifts have always been kind of quick and rush, but like they're a good time to get it in. Bookend, that means if you're already talking about an early training session or a late training session and like getting home, you're looking at earlier or later, and like a lot of coaches end up just like burning the candle at both ends and crushing it. But I mean, it's a little bit of part of the game, and I know you're a little bit younger and like into the career, so that's something like you can kind of run it till the wheels fall off a little bit. But like kind of talking about that too, like you've worked your way up, you've been through going into year three at William and Mary. But starting off, like you gained and like garnered a lot of experience in like different like larger schools, working with football, working at Marquette twice, things along that line. Like, what do you think? What do you think, like young in your career, you're maybe shifting your mindset now, being a little bit more solidified in a full-time position? Like, what were you doing as an intern, kind of just grinding out, trying to get as much experience that like now you feel you're more prepared for being a full-time coach and kind of like maybe slow down the pace a little?
Yeah, and training ties into that as well. I think getting as much experience just in different rooms and different environments with people who know a lot more than me and kind of approaching it with humility. Because worst thing you can do as a young intern or strength coach, or even myself still being a little over 5 years in this, if you count all the internships, is to think that you know everything. So constantly be a sponge and be open-minded. And that applies to the training too. I mean, my personal training was always trying out the programs that these mentors of mine would have the athletes doing. So maybe not the most ideal thing for your body, but just trying to get the same level of strain you'd see the athletes doing and see what that feels like. And that gives me such a better idea as a coach of um, when I'm programming is what is low intensity, what is high intensity, what's all these different methods you go through with like 5-3-1 and some of the classics, and then you see what those feel like and kind of make a blend for your own teams once you're handed over the keys and you have a program that you're in charge of, and you're not just doing the setup and maybe filming videos on the side for coaches and getting return to play athletes. So a huge mixture. It's kind of a whirlwind just because until here, I didn't spend more than a year and a half at any one spot, including myself before I was in strength and conditioning. I did 1 year as an athlete at Hillsdale College, which is a Division II school. So um, the word play football loosely, it was more of a walk on, but weight room was such a formative experience for me there too. With Coach Patrick Gifford was my first strength coach I had there. And funny enough, I transferred to Marquette after being at Hillsdale, and then after a few years later, I left Marquette. He's now Olympic strength and conditioning coach there. So it's cool to have the kind of two worlds cross over. But he was my first introduction to the weight room, and I was originally maybe going to be a PT student or finance or something like that. And then kind of saw how that this was even potentially a career. I hadn't really thought about it until I was in it. And then kind of he's been a mentor of mine, so kind of a point to reference back to, especially when I came here and had baseball. And he had baseball, worked professionally in some spots, and it was my first time having it. And then everywhere else between with a stop at University of Oregon with football, in my first huge football experience outside of playing. And then going back to Marquette after COVID and having a more elevated role as like a true professional intern, even though I was still a student at the time. And then University of Wisconsin with basketball and hockey, both men's and women's, which is really cool right now. We got the Winter Olympics going on. So you see a lot of the athletes. That's a pipeline there from Wisconsin hockey's, both on the men's and women's side. And then graduate assistantship in here. So it was a long-winded answer, but have I think the worst thing you can do if your goal is to be in one sport, like say football is your pinnacle or volleyball, is to just only do internships in those specific areas. Like go find out what they're doing with overhead throwing sports, like something like baseball, or maybe a different kind of overhead sport like swim, or even just you can work at a private facility and see how the relationships are different. So very thankful that I was able to get such a wide breadth of experiences and get in the room with so many people with different viewpoints and their own experiences. And I land somewhere in the culmination of all those people that I was able to work with.
Yeah, it's great to kind of garner all that experience, and like it's good that you kind of knew that going into it, that even if you wanted to work with a certain sport or you had an idea of like the trajectory of where you ultimately kind of saw your career after you found like coaching, that you would start to look out and try to not like pigeonhole yourself to just that one sport or just that one like philosophy. You went out and got experience in different places and were able to like try their programs out, pick those coaches' brain, like see what's going on day to day. I try to tell that to young coaches all the time. Like the best thing you can do is like not follow like someone else's program, but you have a coach that you're working with and you're kind of shadowing as a mentor, like do their program, like go through it, experience it for the athletes. Cause one, you'll be ahead of them or like right in line with what they're doing. So you know how their body reacts, how you feel. It's easier to kind of talk about feel, especially when you're not really familiar with like technique or programming as much as you are like early on in your career. It's easy to just be like, yeah, I did that. Like I did the 5 sets of like 15 Bulgarians yesterday. I'm blasted. And like that's like immediate buy-in with like a young athlete that like sees you as like the same age a lot of times. It's easy for them to at least be like, oh man. And you can kind of pump them up. It's different. And then you have that coach there that made the program to actually like ask questions about. If you're following like any of these like large programs, like you're following triphasic and stuff like that, you're not gonna be able to talk to like Cal about like, hey, this is what's happening. Is this correct? You can talk to other people, but you're now so far removed from the source. You talk to someone that's like implementing like Cal's system at the school, and then it's contextual based off of that sport and what's happening. you can kind of realize why that coach came to the conclusions and made those programs. So it's cool that you were able to do that and like that's how you kind of followed the program initially. And that's it's one of the best things, but you've now like shifted and now like heavy on the weightlifting side a lot more. Is your programming mostly coming from an outside source? Like do you have someone specifically or are you kind of dictating and running your own program now? Because you're starting to kind of climb the ladder and get to bigger stages. How's that look? Do you have your own coach as well?
Yeah, so that actually changed recently this last year. I now go through it's called East Coast Gold weightlifting, which is conveniently from here in Williamsburg. It's about an hour down the road in Virginia Beach. The coach is Phil Sabatini, who I ran into at a national meet doing Olympic weightlifting, which I had been kind of writing my own programs and what you had just said about triphasic, but the Eastern European names you can't pronounce from the 1900s version of that with different weightlifting methods and trying to combine it with actually maybe like triphasic or hypertrophy clusters or just doing these things you probably aren't meant to be mixed together and still beat myself over the head with volume and intensity and getting some results. So being able to get to some national meets while doing that was awesome, but to a point where getting some outside eyes on me and feedback and some expertise that I don't have. Weightlifting applied to athletics is one thing, but finding someone who's an expert in doing that from a national level with that specific athlete with weightlifters and has been doing it for a long time. Also, whether you are doing your own program, I feel like just getting another set of eyes on you to see your technique if you're serious about something is huge. And what's been great about Phil too at East Coast Gold is he was a college strength coach before his current position, owning the gym and being a kinesiology professor at Old Dominion. So you can pick his brain on some new things too that I might learn and be able to apply to my athletes in some smaller ways. But that's been cool. The first time I've ever been a part of a team since really playing college football. It's a different thing being an individual sport, but you go to national meets and you're not just going to your own, hotel room off by yourself, and then you go to the competition and you pack your own bags and you're just kind of in your own world. Like you can go get food with other people and enjoy it when you have to travel somewhere really far away. You've got a support system if you're maybe cutting weight or doing something like that. But if you're doing some sort of competitive sport and you want to take it to the next level, I would absolutely recommend trying to get an outside coach just for some new perspective. Now, for me, it works out really particularly because he's been in the college strength and conditioning setting. So there's a lot of times where I do have to get up at a crazy time in the morning or chop some sets and reps off, move days around because it just gets away from you. Um, so it works. It's just kind of a so what now what type of mentality. Like some I got interrupted. I'm not able to finish this thing. All right, I'll do the next best thing that I can. Same as you might have to be adaptable with athletes. Like you get a weather change. We're in Virginia here, and we had school closed down for 3 days from an inch of snow. Which me being from Wisconsin, I don't understand a ton, but it's something you got to adapt to. So being able to adaptable in all ways, not even just in your own programming, but your workouts and with the athletes and coaches. I think that's just a good transferable skill outside of strength and conditioning too.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, you can't plan for everything too, but like being adaptable and kind of rolling with those punches, especially knowing that like when all's said and done, like training like kind of comes secondary to being able to coach. Like we do want to like focus as coaches on our health and wellness and be training, but that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, you have to be a competitive athlete or like you're able to sacrifice time spent with your athletes, like focusing on your own specific training. So you do have to shift schedules, you have to prepared for all the things that you kind of talked about too. But yeah, I've heard nothing good but good things. I've had friends that competed on East Coast Gold and back in the day too. So
Oh, awesome.
that's awesome to have like Phil kind of running it and like having a really good understanding of what you're doing. It's always so beneficial like for a coach to have like some skin in the game and know kind of your specific situation, because then when the results come or you like kind of say there's a shift in the schedule, like he can completely relate. And yeah, having a support system and having kind of a group, even in an individual sport, like that takes a lot of pressure and weight off your soldier, like your shoulders when you go into meets when at that point in time you want to be the most relaxed and be able to just focus like single-mindedly on your performance rather than the outcome and like more preparation and all those kind of like small things that can kind of get absorbed when you have a team supporting you behind like what you're doing on the platform. So definitely cool. And I mean, that's outsourcing that coaching is always great too, because it also gives you an opportunity, again, like an internship to learn. And I think older coaches could do well with that. And I know that's something that I'm looking at doing myself is like just outsourcing my program to someone else and like get a new fresh set of eyes on what I'm doing. But I need to find someone same like you're talking about, someone that knows the profession and can understand like, hey, why didn't you get this done today? It was like, well, this happened. And some people would be like, oh, we'll just get it done. It's like, well, you're not dealing with like someone 9 to 5 that sits all day. Like you have X, Y, and Z happening. So I need to have kind of like that easy shift in the schedule in order to do it. So definitely, definitely some good points. And so like you talk about like all the weightlifting, like everything that you're kind of doing on the side and making sure that it fits around your coaching schedule. Like when it actually comes to programming with your athletes, like how heavily are you kind of like relying on weightlifting movements kind of being incorporated into your program? Or is it set and setting kind of dictated off the athletes? Because same as like Phil is really good at what he's done. He's got a lot of skin in the game. He's been competing at a high level. And like you're doing the same thing, like just like earlier in the stage. A lot of your athletes are even earlier on or not familiar with those movements. So how do you kind of scale that down if you are using the movements and then also like project to different teams like soccer, they might not use it very often. Baseball pitchers might not use it ever. Going to a football team that's got 120 plus, and you're trying to teach complex movements with a couple coaches.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it right there out of the gates that it's not realizing that it's not for every team in every context. Same way I would approach any sort of squat variation or upper body. Like it just depends more on the context of the sport and the season. So having baseball is probably my best example. I don't have them do much in terms of Olympic variations. It's usually some sort of squat jump or trap bar pull. The hitters I might have do clean or snatch pulls at certain times of the year, maybe more in the off season. But yeah, when you get pitchers throwing bullpens and having live debuts, especially this time of year, last thing I want to do is add an extra stress on the outside for their shoulders. So how can I still get explosive triple extension and some sort of body coordination, some sort of loaded jumps or plyos in, and it ends up usually being some sort of power complex where you got a heavy movement and a light movement over speed or some sort of French contrast method. Um, but then for the teams that it does make sense for, like football, doing it multiple days a week, it is really helpful to have experienced probably a greater beginning to end scale or spectrum of how Olympic lifts can feel when I'm coaching the athletes. Because if you're talking about some of the most detailed cues you give to like a national level weightlifter, I'm rarely pulling those out of the toolbox for an offensive lineman who might be a freshman or sophomore football player. It's usually the same 5 to 10 cues for more beginner level athletes that you're using over and over and maybe finding to get the same effect 3 different cues that might work for 3 different people and trying to find a way to get the click with them to get them closer to being more proficient because if they move the weight better they're going to get a better adaptation and that's the end of the day when you only have 20 hours a week as an entire sport or 8 hours depending on time of the year in the NCAA, which might be 3 or 4 lifts a week, 3 or 4 hours. It's not like having an open-ended thing as a power lifter or a weightlifter or a strength athlete where hey, here's your workout, whatever time you got, get it done. It's like we got an hour sometimes, maybe an hour and a half, and a lot of moving parts, a lot of people in a small space. We got to get them through as much as possible. So it's kind of like a puzzle. It's you got to get creative sometimes. And how much time do I want to spend coaching and refining an Olympic movement or any movement really? Some of the ones that are more technical, and what's the minimum amount of time I can spend doing that to get the maximum effect. So I revert to a lot of like Dvorak complexes with athletes or other barbell complexes where they're doing really light load, a lot of movements to kind of prep them, and then hitting a few sets at a higher intensity. Maybe people talk about the debate of like catching the full depth on a clean, and maybe if a team has done it for a long time and demonstrated that they have some people who are very very good at it. But other times it ends up being such a small piece of the whole thing. So that might have been one of my biggest growing points from being a coach a few years ago is just I love this thing. I want everybody else to love it. And now like, all right, a lot of these athletes just have so much going on in their day and so much time on feet and so much outside stress, even from maybe academic side or social. So I just need their attention for a really short amount of time to give them a really good product in it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I feel like you learned that lesson a little bit sooner than I know myself and maybe a lot of other coaches did too. Like you have something that you know is beneficial, that like you enjoy training, like you have experience, you know how to coach and teach and bring athletes up to speed, but you're looking at all the other kind of factors that go in outside of just like, I have the ability, we have the equipment, like we can do it. Like you're looking at the time, you're looking like what the athletes actually need a little bit more. You're looking at just the type of season they're in. And if it's like honestly, like, is the juice worth the squeeze at this point? Like, how can I teach them these movements and get the maximum benefit in like the least amount of time? And I know I've dealt with that a couple of instances where it's like, I know this will be beneficial. I want to teach these athletes this, but if the coach isn't willing to like have a lot of time invested in the weight room, like, is it really worth teaching Olympic movements to a team that's never done it before just because they want to do it, but they're only willing to come in once a week? And sometimes they don't come in at all. Or there's so many other things that you can train that stimulus and you can get like a similar effect, maybe not equal when you start projecting like 4 or 5 years out, but you might not have those athletes 4 or 5 years out and you got to kind of get those results sooner. So how much is it like maybe something now being like in your third year there that sometimes might be just honestly team dependent or head coach dependent, where you might have taught them a lot of weightlifting movements the year before, but the team that you currently have is not fit for it, or the time that you have and like some of the other constraints like conflict what you were doing like in the past years previous. Is it something that you kind of like reevaluate at the end of the year when you start building the program out, or do you have to kind of wait until you see like the new team arrive on campus in the fall for you to kind of like see if they're capable of doing this again without just giving them what you did last year?
Yeah, I go through that thought process end of every semester when I'm coming up with what the plan is for the next one. That because sometimes it isn't always just entirely the sport because there's so many ways to still have a correct answer, a right answer, and getting an athlete to have really good physical development. For example, I used to have the swim team here when I first got to William and Mary, and their previous coaches had had them do Olympic movements at a really high level. So I walked into people who were really proficient already at the technique. So we're in a different case where maybe a team has never done it before with something like swim, where rate of force development matters in their sport, but not to the same extent it might with like a volleyball or basketball or football. Maybe make a different decision and do something else, but they're so good at it already that if I'd be a missed opportunity to not continue that. And then same thing with some field sports like soccer's where they might not train 4 days a week in the off season like football does. But I'll say I usually try and stick with the plan for like an annual cycle or at least a semester. And now in my third year here, you can see some of these teams that when I came in, they weren't used to Olympic lifting, and now some of those freshmen are upperclassmen. They're starting to turn the corner on having better technique. But you can really, in my experience, you can make that correction in a short amount of time if you're willing to devote a little bit of time to it and go through like a more military style, like whole team together on the count, like bottom position, then first pull, second pull, and like you walk them through a couple of those so they can kind of feel it in real time, maybe for the first 2 weeks of an off season, and then cut them loose and go around and coach individually. Um, you, I found myself doing a good mixture of both depending on the team, and I really do still think it's a very high return on investment for a sport, a contact sport like football, for example, that rather than having to program three different movements to get the same loaded triple extension and then also the catch that you'd have on something like a clean, if you can teach it really well in the long run, I think it saves you time. But like you said, if you have a team that might only come in 1 day a week, I don't know if there's enough time to get that skill acquisition. You want to get better at any skill in life, like pottery or something. You only do it once a week. It's going to take a lot longer than if you're able to do 2 or 3 times a week, like they get with their sport practice. So the short answer that I try to give to when I'm talking with like our interns as well, trying to get them caught up to speed on how to coach with Olympic lifts is it depends. The context depends. And you just got to be authentic to what you feel comfortable coaching. If you really get at coaching it and you can get the room to all be on the same page, then it's worth your time. But if not, there's so many other ways to do it as well.
Yeah, there's so many other ways that you can kind of add it in, but yeah, that time and just the consistency you're able to kind of implement those things and teach is is got to be one of the biggest factors when it comes to it. Like if all things are similar, like similar team, kind of background, like equipment, access and all that stuff, like especially like you talked about too, like how intricate you get with some of the coaching and like yourself being at a higher level, like you need meticulous coaching and someone to like give you feedback all the time. Early on with some of those athletes, like one of the best things to do is like just slow down the movements and like you said, like more of like a militaristic, like everybody's on like in the same positions, like kind of on the clock or like on the whistle so that you can wholesale teach a lot of people. And I know like people love to see like football or like bigger teams like do that like all in unison, like kind of disciplined. But there is a purpose behind it besides everybody just doing the same thing. It's a lot easier to tell if someone's doing something like incorrectly so that you can fix it. And you don't necessarily want to do that forever because you want individuals to capitalize on their strengths and do things that like they're really performing well in. But on the front end as a teaching tool and building a really good foundation, like I've found that's been just great to like watch people excel. And then the good ones, you can kind of let them coast a little bit while you focus on individuals that might need a little bit extra love when it comes to learning the motor patterns for the movement, getting in the right positions, building some of that general strength. But yeah, that return on investment is pretty big if you have the time, you have the ability to like actually teach and coach.
Yeah,
Um,
that's like one of the first things I kind of had to adjust to. Having most of my sports are 30 plus athletes in a weight room at a time, and realizing that I personally wouldn't like to do that in my own workout where you're on the clock on a coach's whistle, and I see that kind of thing get a lot of hate online usually when people post it, but it makes sense if you got one of you and there's 30 athletes to go around and coach them all individually. I might get to three and I turn around and they're on the next superset, and I only saw I don't know what 10% of my athletes do a rep because I went all in on a couple of them. So sometimes just breaking it down like that in a whole group setting for any movement, if you're trying to get tempo back squats and you want them to actually hit 3 seconds down or whatever it may be, just get everybody together. They're going to learn it quick. You can line everybody up and see them, and then that can be a short part of the off season. So then the next 90% of it is going to they're going to understand the expectation and it's going to flow a little more smooth.
exactly. And I think I love doing that kind of as like a restart to the off season too, because it sets a precedence of like what the training is going to look like. This is the standard. And then like as you start to build that foundation for the new year with a new team or like maybe a new sport or at a new school, which is even arguably more important because you're new to them, is you can pass that stuff off and the athletes will now start taking a little bit more onus and policing themselves. But in the beginning, you have to like show them exactly what the standard looks like and what to do. And to your point, like being able to coach, if you are doing it like coach's whistle or timed, now you have the ability to at least see everybody once. And there's a time and place to it, and you don't want every single set to be like that. But if it's something that's super important or foundational to your program, I love doing the tempos and like positional stuff on the front end so that I could see everybody do it and I could all the other athletes could see how it's done well or see if someone has a fault and then cycle everybody off the racks and then get the next one up. And I at least got to see a couple sets. And then the same with like the back end when you're starting to get to the heavier ones and people are going to like technical failure or like getting close to like a rep max or something like that. It's like, hey, this is a coaches have to see this set and sign it off so that I can see like what happens when you're actually at this. I can adjust your percentages or make sure you're like within the right RPE, whatever it is. But like I think being a little bit forward thinking and planning out opportunities to like see the most important part of a training session, especially when you're by yourself and you have that many athletes. If you don't think about that on the front end and plan the training session, you're you might not even see a couple athletes for the whole hour. Like you'll sit
Yeah.
down and realize it's like, man, was like Jess even there today? Because you're like just walking and you're walking around racks and you just like so happen to like never like talk to that individual the whole time. And if you're deliberate with it, like you can at least see a couple things and have some interactions.
Yeah, an hour goes by quick when you have a large team like that. And coming back around for the second year or the third year in the same cycle of like an off season, try to write down what happened last year in real time and be like, I didn't like how we had really good squat depth early in the year, and I believe in full range of motion with high intensity, at least in the off season. And we get to the end, and what happened to the bottom, half of their squat as the weights went up. So what can I do to reinforce that with some sort of tempo, or even things like if you have interns that have been around the program for a while, that you can incorporate more, having them do the same things. Like they get either assigned zones of the weight room or certain movements. Maybe some of them are better at coaching if you have someone who's a weightlifter or power lifter, and just finding any way to get an extra set of eyes when you're by yourself. But yeah, it's the logistics that you don't think about outside of actual programming. I have no idea who the quote's from, but I like it a lot. Is show me your weight room and I'll show you your program. Like that's where too we're trying to plug in a program that I've had from a mentor and take a couple pieces of it and you move it to a different weight room and you forget like, oh, we only have three glute ham raise machines and there's 60 swimmers waiting in line to do it right now. We'll have to adjust that. That in your first year, where by the second or third year at one spot, you really understand the weight room. And if I want this specific adaptation, here's the best exercises in this space to do it. Whether you have 20 sets of barbells or you're see a lot more weight rooms online recently in college football being more machine based. And then you just have to be able to adapt your program to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think you get more familiar when you're in places a little bit longer as well. And I mean, that's a good thing to kind of touch on. Like this is the longest you've been like at one play, like one stop, and like this is your first full-time like gig. Like, I mean, we know like how much responsibility goes into being a GA, but luckily now like take going to class out of it and you could focus on multiple teams and assisting with teams and leading your own, going to practice and like games and stuff like that. Like this is kind of the sole focus. So being kind of more settled in, like what have you kind of noticed now, like having multiple years at the same place, like being embedded with similar teams for the most part? Like what have you noticed like you can kind of start adding to the program or maybe subtracting from the program that you maybe necessarily weren't able to do like year one? Like what can you start to like kind of standardize more or build out to like create a more like structured, like positive program since you've been there a little bit longer than you have in some of the other stints?
Yeah, I'm first off, I'm so thankful that in the last couple of years I've had such a high density of coaching, which if you told me that when I was applying to jobs out of being an unpaid intern or out of being a graduate assistant, and you hear, hey, you might have 5 or 6 teams that all train 3+ days a week, you run into a buzzsaw of a schedule, and that's really intimidating up front. But once you do that for a couple of years, you just get so much, same as you program exercises, so much volume and intensity of coaching that you just get better at it. So certain movements that maybe you were trying out in the beginning and now they become a main staple of your program, and how to even just have a presence in the room with coaching voice. And I think early on, I probably over cued and would just throw a bunch of cues at athletes and hope something sticks. Where I realize, same as myself having a coach for weightlifting, if I'm trying to think of 3 different things while I'm doing the same movement, I'm going to do them all really poorly. So just giving someone one movement or one focus for this next couple sets, and let's fix one thing really well today. So just getting so many coaching hours, you're going to get better at it. And you can kind of see that in a vacuum too with interns who might have spent a couple of years with the program. That night and day difference, I believe, would be true of myself from 2 years ago, and what I hang my hat on for coaching, both culturally and in what's in the program. Because you show up on the first year and you might not even be thinking too much about the culture. You're trying to learn 200 names of athletes and get to know the coaches and what are they looking for? Do they value lifting? You're not even thinking about the next level of things like KPIs and maybe sports science, practice model, and even the something as simple as doing like if you want to get the room's attention, instead of like, hey, everybody listen up, you just like, all right, we do a whistle clap, and everybody do that. They get used to that every day. Everybody, it saves you 5 seconds right there. Or different things like at the end of lifts, putting athletes on the spot so they get a chance to speak in front of their peers, things you might have just totally blown by in the first year. So now that been able to at least get off the ground level of getting good quality training on the floor in the weight room and with the field work, now that there's a system in place and the athletes kind of understand what that looks like, you get more into what is the coach looking specifically for the culture this year. They're coming off of kind of a down year, and you need some new people to step up. And how can I like make things maybe the superset at the end that would have been your fourth block and your maybe I guess we'd call least important exercises. And you got an hour; they're all important. But things maybe turn that into a cultural thing. Like we're going to do a competition at the end with wind bikes or a grip strength hold or something where they have to compete with each other and be uncomfortable together and someone has to step up. Or on the other side of that too, being able to maybe take a bigger role with some of the sports science of, thankfully here we have some force plates and Nord boards from Bald where I can look into the data on that. And a couple of my sports have GPS or heart rate monitors. So I can sit down with the coaches now that I've freed up the buy-in time. I think in your first year, another quote I heard, I forget from who, that most young coaches or assistants in strength conditioning, like your first year, uh, your first year, you're not going to be great. Like it takes at least a year to kind of to get to that next level and be able to actually work now. So now I can look at the GPS and sit down with coaches and come out to a couple practices and try and figure out how are we having like a high-low practice model? How are injuries looking in season and out of season? What even with the GPS, since smaller schools like this, you end up doing everything: the sports science, the nutrition. So a lot of the coaches, they might not know the lingo that you see at a lot of our conferences, the national conferences, but they understand at least volume and intensity at a practice in their own way, whether it's changing drills or how they substitute players, but trying to get on the same page to, okay, are we putting the athletes in the best spot for their in-season games, their out-of-season competitions to keep injuries at the lowest possible amount, even though you can't truly prevent them, but you can reduce the risk. So being able to branch out and maybe one last example, is a long-winded answer, would be with GPS, like get the demands in season for say soccer, like how many total yardage do they have, what's the amount of high speed running, and how can we build up to that in the weeks leading up to season next year so that we have an actual target to hit instead of just a lot of coaches have a good eye for it if they've been doing it for 20 years, but you don't know what you don't know if you're not tracking and measuring it. Same goes for the weight room. With year one, you kind of get through it and you do things you know work, but now here's three specific metrics I want to improve, whether that's something that I've deemed on the force plate outside of just jump height or anything in between sprint timing gates to make a system for yourself that you can hang your hat on and say, these are the measurables that I want um, to put the most value in as a coach.
Yeah, it's great. That's a great way to do it. And like obviously, like you said, a lot of good points. Like especially year one is such a different kind of year versus the subsequent ones after that. And it's kind of the opportunity like you want to solidify like your system, but at the same time, like you're learning, like you said, you're learning players' names, you're learning the system you're kind of stepping into. You're learning so many things. You're learning how the athletic department runs, you're learning how your sport coaches want to operate, what they've done in the past, how your athletes are, like their athletes' personalities, the culture of the team. Maybe it's a new sport. There's so many, and then you got to learn the weight room. Like, how are you going to organize your training sessions and actually get like work done? There's so many things that like factor in it. And being by yourself, especially on the Olympic side, it's a lot to kind of like boil down and like create a program from it. And you see a lot of like, I've seen a lot of pushback from sport coaches or like fellow strength coaches or other people when like they see kind of just a very kind of bland program. But I'd rather do that and execute it really well and solidify the standard and add more to the program as I like get more adjusted to the system than just throw in what I was doing before and just like make the team and the sport like conform to like what I want to ultimately do. Like save that for a couple years down the line and then like slowly integrate that into it rather than just try to rush to failure and realize that like, oh, this team isn't capable of doing this or this coach isn't bought into this. They want to see more field work. They want to do all their plyometric work on the field because they want to do it in cleats. Fine. But like if I start doing that in the weight room already and then they're double dosing it out in the field, like I could have just slow played it a little bit more and maybe learned that before just trying to implement my system. So I'm always jealous of people that have been in places longer and been able to like kind of extend that out and like really solidify yourself into a program because that consistency and continuity, whether it's between like the same sport coach for a long amount of time and then them having a structure and the strength coach comes in and learns that, or like maybe a head coach leaves and the strength coach is the kind of bridge between the two. So now you can kind of fill that new sport coach in on, hey, this is what we were doing before in the past. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, how do you want to accomplish this? And then you can bridge the gap. And I think it's hard. Like now I'm out of college, but like to see other people have to deal with like transfer portal and like NIL and all that stuff, which makes it crazier. I thought we were already moving all the time as strength coaches and sport coaches too much, but now it just seems like chaos because now all the support staff and head coaches are moving and all the athletes are moving. So how's that been for you? Because you're trying to be consistent now in year three, but everything else is chaos around you.
Yeah, and to refine one of the things you just said, I heard originally from Stu Roche, a mentor of mine at Marquette, who I've seen you've had on this podcast, said that like the baking analogy of with an athlete, that you can always take the cake out of the oven. If it's not done, you can put it back in. But once it's burnt, you got to restart. And that can be in terms of pushing athletes really close to injury or just overdoing in the weight room where you're not getting good quality of training or with practice or whatever it may be. But starting off with just the most basic couple things with good quality movements, whether that you're be spending majority of that maybe with like a field sport like soccer, out on the field doing sprinting and plyos, or if it's somewhere where the meat and potatoes is more in the weight room with something like baseball because their sport's so technical. Um, that I definitely, after my first year, I quickly learned it. I shaved it from maybe 12 to 16 exercises down to less than 10. And let's do more sets, higher quality warm up. Just get to high intensity on a couple of sets, but do it really well instead of just crazy variety, throw pasta at the wall, hope it sticks and doesn't fall off. Um, so going into a school this size being FCS with football particularly, I don't work with basketballs, but I've seen it from some coworkers. The NIL and transfer portal is now changing it at least at this level where the development of the athlete, this might be one of the last places where the development of the athlete from ground floor to becoming elite matters a lot in a short amount of time. There's a quote, can't even think of the name right now. Uh, Scott Cochran at Georgia back in the day would say, we got already got Ferraris just going to put spinners on them, like for football players. They're going to come in and you've got these 5 stars. You've got people who've already been built up at an FCS level school, and they're going to come in pretty much ready to go. You just have to make sure that they're staying healthy and staying primed to do what they need to do. There's probably not a whole lot of developing where we get a lot of guys who they need a lot of work to get basic strength. Like maybe they have the frame and the height, but they have to get their body weight up and put some size on, or they already have the size, but they're not a very athletic mover, and you just have to get them able to move in new ways, and that could even be like mobility and field work. But so many a wide breadth of different needs put into a bucket, and then still like seeing the value in you're going to develop that athlete and they might go to another school at like a bigger school once you've got the finished product and not finished their last year or two with you, but realizing that doesn't diminish any of the work you're doing for your uh, logo, your school, your university, that you help that athlete out and within their time with you, you made a difference, hopefully on the not just physically, but with the relationship you have with them and all that. But it's definitely the model is definitely changing a little bit in physical preparation to be. You're still going to have some people that are projects you got to develop, but coaches might come and go really quick. Athletes might come and go really quick, and that just makes what you do, the detail of what you do, all the more important in the weight room and on the field and at practice because you have even less time. It seems to feel like with every athlete. And that's one other sidebar on that too, is a couple sports here. I have had the opportunity to be, now that I've been here for start a third year, an old coaching administration and a new coaching administration coming in. And that it's not like a scenario you can probably choose to be in, but as a young coach, I think that's so formative and helpful to have to navigate. Now you're the one of the main anchors of normalcy for like these athletes that you've known, and you kind of have to help the new coaching staff understand what these athletes have been doing and a bridge between the old staff. You're going to probably have a lot of new transfers come in, and the culture changes a ton, and let alone the training model might completely change at practice. So you figured out your weight room, you figured out your athletes and your model, but now with those same people might look so much different with the coach that's coming in.
Yeah, there's so many things that can kind of happen and like trying to find some normalcy and consistency if you're still kind of going through that transition is super helpful because now it seems like people leave in oftentimes of like adversity or something's difficult and that's what it's one thing I see from the outside world. It's like there's a lot of opportunity from for NIL and everything too, but there's also a lot of opportunity positively, but a lot of opportunity on the other side where you can run from your problems. And it's unfortunate to kind of see, but yeah, I mean, you talked about like developing versus fine tuning and all those things too. Like, it's very different. And like I've always liked that level where you actually get to see athletes for a while and develop them and go through that process with them. Um, but whatever scenario you're put in, however long you have with the athletes, like it's about trying to get as much done in as little amount of time as possible without rushing it. But you can't control if a coach leaves, you can't control if an athlete leaves. Like you hope that the impact you made, whether it's like more than just physical, like carries over and then someone else who kind of picks up with that person gets a great foundation to kind of work off and continue to build. Either it's more development or it's more fine tuning because they're in a better position. So that's all great and good. Like it's nice to see like you be able to like recognize that and then build year to year and then not like make wholesale changes, but just refine what you're doing and see what you were doing the previous semester, previous year, make those changes for the athletes or be the consistent person if other changes are occurring because you're still there. Um, you've been at some places like you mentioned, like obviously like Stu, who's been on the show before, at your time at Marquette, and you had like I've talked to him a bunch of times about like just the intensive like setup and structure of like their paid internship program. And I've talked to other individuals that came out of that program as well. You've been in other places for internships on the Olympic side, like with Wisconsin, like hockey and basketball, and then Oregon football as well too. Um, how do you kind of now approach maybe being in a more mentor figure for some of like the interns or like volunteer coaches that now start kind of coming around William and Mary and are interested in the profession, especially because you're kind of the next step. Like you're very closely removed from being a GA, very closely removed from being an intern as well. So you can probably relate to them as well. Like, how do you kind of get them up to speed to help with your program? And how are those conversations you're having with those coaches that are interested in like following in your footsteps?
Yeah, I think it's a very big um, help for me just to have that perspective so recently that can kind of be me being authentic to my own coaching style and my own way of teaching and coaching. That I, at least with the young interns that we get, I mean, sometimes you have PT students who are, they don't exactly know what they want to get out of it, but with every class you have, you're still a Division I athletic school, and you'll get people who are going to go on to probably actually be strength and conditioning coaches. So just finding out what their goals are, same way it would be with my athletes. You got to get to know your athletes and what they're actually trying to get out of it. It'll be a little different with athletes because obviously winning or improving at their sport is going to be one of their goals, more than likely, or it should be. But then what kind of makes them tick specifically? And same thing with interns or even coworkers that you're trying to grow with together and develop as young coaches. It ends up being the same sort of conversations and learning, just scaled. So you might have because I'm speaking from a place of just kind of co-taking over the internship coordination roles this year. We had a really good intern coordinator before, was moving up to director of football, so set me up in a really good spot with good communications with like the people across campus and postings to get good interns in the door. Um, but basically, whatever they want to improve in, they have to get reps at, and finding a way to have the trust to put them in those spots too. So maybe crossing a few boxes first, like there's all the intern things that you're going to have to do that you even have to do as a full-time coach a lot of the times, which is managing things like just the cleanliness of the weight room and the setup and tear down and stocking protein shakes and doing manual labor that makes the whole thing go. And if people approach that with a lot of intent and don't kind of just we go through the motions in that shows a lot in terms of this person is more trustworthy. They can handle important things because it's not just grunt work. Like interns are often stationed for like data collection, which is what you're basing your programming on. If you can't manage the timing gates or the force plates, then your data is incorrect, and whatever decisions you're trying to make isn't you can't really tell, especially when you got to go answer to a coach about how their athletes are doing. So helping them understand how important those roles are, and then as they level up and do really well at them, trying to find what their strengths are. Because there might be someone who wants to get into research and analytics. Well, good. Let's give you some extra work where you can take a mild deep dive on the sports science tech and kind of manage all that and help teach maybe some of the newer interns if they're a year or two removed or they've been there for a year or two and you have new people coming in, and then people who want to be in coaching, trying to give them the platform of, all right, we're going to start you off with leading the warm-ups. At the same time, in the background, in the intern curriculum, we're talking about what a good warm-up is composed of and giving them practice on each other with the interns to, hey, you got 5 minutes, you have this piece of equipment, come up with a warm-up that meets these criteria, and then just get put them on the spot. And then it's a little bit less of a, a jarring situation when they have to go in front of a group of athletes who are their same age and have to step up and do it. So kind of setting them up for success, but also giving them the repetitions to be able to do it. Because I think that's when it first started to click for me as an intern was probably my second or third internship. Having someone like Stu at Marquette lay a really good groundwork for me, and pretty quickly after that, having Oregon football with I know you've had Mason Baggett on the podcast, and also Jeff Eaton, who's now at Oregon State. That those two in our intern class there were very trusting to put us in front of some very important athletes and give us reps at it. And once I had at least had enough knowledge and from my own training in the years prior to know what certain things feel like, now when I got to my later stages of internship or being a graduate assistant, I could go up and just get reps on the floor of coaching warm-ups as an intern, or maybe getting return to play athletes and having to think creatively more often. So you can't just throw someone out there and expect them to do well in front of a group if they've never done it before. They're not really don't have a vested interest in strength and conditioning. So have conversations with them and have some sort of guide rails to get them to a certain point, and then at some point cut them loose to go in front of a group. And at the end of the day, you're going to fail at some point. We've all failed as coaches and had, maybe a word salad comes out in front of a group and you don't know what the main point was, or you could have coached something better. But that's how you grow, is being able to lean into some of that discomfort and take the feedback. I think that's one of the most important qualities just at large in the world today, not even just strength and conditioning, but being able to receive feedback and apply it and not let that affect your ego and be, take it personally, because you got to have tough skin to be a strength and conditioning in general or a coach anywhere.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, you kind of answered the next question I was going to kind of follow up with what you thought was going to be one of the more important things for an intern to actually be successful within strength conditioning, or if it's a coaching or like performance-based adjacent career like physical therapy or athletic training or something along those lines that are just interested in getting in the weight room, but they actually start developing a passion for something slightly different. Those character traits and like that work ethic and discipline still transfers over to whatever they're going to do. And that still inevitably is going to help them by just being around the program and maybe seeing what a different department and like coaching staff does to prepare athletes in a different way. So that's awesome to kind of see that and see all the different like skills that you learn from all your different experiences and be able to kind of take those learning points and then direct them, have conversations with the interns that you're starting to work with now and invest in them. And I think it's one thing to like throw athletes like to the wolves and let them like kind of learn and trial by fire, but you can't really do that without or you can't set them up for success, I'll say, and do that without knowing them, knowing what their goals are, knowing kind of like what their strengths and weaknesses might be, and Some of them might need a little bit more of a nudge. Some of them might need to be just actually put out there because they're a little bit more advanced and they have the ability to do it. But there still needs to have some conversations and learning behind the scenes before you just let them go out with your team or let them kind of like word vomit everywhere or teach the wrong movement or teach something a little bit wrong. Um, but it's a two-way street. Like I saw the last couple years, some interns coming in, and I've seen it places in other schools too, where they come in and they're looking for what we can offer. But I've also seen other places where head coaches or like full-time staff are looking for what interns can offer them to like take stuff off their plate. And neither is right. Like it's a two-way street and that should be mutually beneficial between the others. And I think those interns need to be doing as much research behind the scenes as they are learning when they come in and then treat that, like you said, receive that feedback and use it and apply it. So sounds like you got something going and hopefully you get some more quality coaches that come in that are interested in the profession so you can give back and learn from them and keep kind of refining that program the same as you're refining your coaching programs as well.
Yeah, it's the coolest thing, just being able to go so many different places. And biggest advice is just surrounding yourself with good people. So get in, see what people are doing in different rooms around the country, in different sports, in different settings. And the same with the people that you bring into your room. Once the role kind of flips a little bit from intern to being in a position of your coach selecting interns, and it has to come from a place for them, for interns or coaches, like realizing what value you can add to that person. What, instead of the opposite of what you had just said, like what can I receive from this person? It's like what can I give to this person to add value? Or the most successful interns, they find a way to put out fires before they become a bigger issue. Things you might not even know that are going on in the background, or even older interns helping out less experienced interns. Same with coaching when you're talking football and being on an assistant staff, that really good assistants or really good Olympic coaches make sure bad things don't get up to the level of now the director or the head strength coach is involved. Um, so then the same thing for us to the interns. What value can I give to them? I want to make it directed at their goal. Getting to know your people above all else, like the athletes that like you'd mentioned. Something I've been thinking a little more about recently too is not having entitlement. I think with among athletes, I'm guilty of it sometimes too. You just um, don't realize how you might be coming across to someone else, or thinking certain things are below you when you've just got so much going on. I just need to focus on getting this program out to athletes. But finding a way to still have, I guess, the opposite virtue of that would be humility. Just coming from a place of humility, and there's places or there's times where you're gonna have to be more direct and stern, but um, just making sure there's no entitlement in the room at large for teams. If you want to get team culture or intern group culture, coaching culture, I'm sure there's a lot of other books and things that have been written on that, but I think that's one that's just kind of come to the surface recently with coming around the loop for the third year and seeing trends that successful if that sort of thing doesn't start to pop up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's always a good thing to have humility and not being entitled or feeling like you're above any small job. And obviously, like the higher you go up in the hierarchy, like on coaching staffs or like any organization, like the more is on that person's plate. So like you're not really looking at the head football coach to like be taking out the trash every single day. But
Right.
it's not to say that that individual isn't capable of doing it or doesn't do it, but what they're doing has a little bit more importance and affects a lot more people than someone else kind of doing that smaller level task. Um, but yeah, it's a good way. It's a good way to kind of put that in, like really tie a bow on just breaking your way into the profession and having a really good understanding of what it is and like all the different jobs and things that entail it and what ultimately makes a successful intern or future coach too. And You need to learn every aspect of it. And you got to be really open and adaptable in the beginning to absorb all that stuff and try to apply it in the most positive manner. So now on the reverse kind of that too, like you're still in the position you're in. Every coach is trying to get a little bit better at what they're doing, refine their technique, learn as well, and stay like humble because there's so much out there to offer. Where do you kind of go for like different resources or leaning on other coaches or maybe like your own mentorship group as well? Like, how do you kind of like sharpen the sword and like try to refine your own technique outside of maybe just William and Mary and like just day to day kind of refining? Like, what are some of like your favorite resources to either get up to speed on coaching or programming or anything along those lines?
Yeah, it's interesting once you're not in a position to like go volunteer for your time for a bunch of other coaches anymore. You've kind of got your set experiences there, so it turns more into not being afraid to reach out to someone, jump on a call. Let's see what the school next door is doing. Even if it's 20, 30 minutes, you can carve out on a weekend or something. And even it's fun when you see some of the people you interned with and now they're working a sport at a school that might be in your conference that's a rival school. And what do you with your resources, what are you guys doing over there? Um, and things like that. But there's so many more good resources, it seems like every year. I don't know exactly what it was like, 10, 20 years ago with some of my mentors and what they had textbooks and going to the conference and things like that. But even online, there's really good resources like Sportsmith, for example, put on a good conference, or plenty of other companies like that. Even if you go on the NSCA or CSCCA website and see some of the new things that are being put up. Even for me recently, it's been a lot of sports science and trying to refine KPIs. Like on the one hand, you want to track something and find out if what you're doing is improving what you want it to improve, but also if you're just taking a bunch of tests to try them out for the sake of taking tests, then if I'm doing that, I either have to teach it to an intern and they have to be good at it, or I have to do it and I can't watch the athletes while that's happening. So trying to figure out all these new flashy things, like we just got force frames. What can I take from that and actually have that impact my program? So a lot of the sports science companies have their own database of teaching you how to use those things and studies and things linked. So calling other people and just attacking online resources that you can find, it doesn't hurt to. I'm probably the least like this of everybody at William and Mary, but having just a stack of textbooks and continuing to go back and read through them, or getting another coach's program online or through a book and just seeing if it's something you'd be interested, try it yourself and maybe put it towards a team. So I'm thankful that it's that easy to go find out new things. But at the end of the day, you probably want to try something like that yourself in your own workouts, or try the test yourself before you're just going in front of the athletes and doing it. So another thing I love about this field is everybody's pretty open for a phone call to jump on and share what they know. And I heard at it was the CCA conferences last year, Coach Kaz, who was formerly at TCU with football, he went up in front of everybody and said, like, everybody in this room steals well. Like you need to be good at stealing good programs and ideas from other people and then putting it into your own context. Like don't be afraid to, well, that's that coach's thing, so I'm going to go do something else, and I don't want to, bring that and quote unquote steal it. It's like I mentioned before, there's probably someone with a name you can't pronounce in a European country long ago that has already tried what you're kind of coming up with in real time. So you just have to find what that was and see how it worked, and then apply it to your own context.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it too. Like having a good open network of individual coaches or just being open to reach out and stuff too, because your development as soon as you kind of get out of that interning mindset or GA where you're almost like not structured of this person is going to be kind of like essentially like I'm shadowing them. and I'm going to learn as much as I can. You have so much responsibility when you're a full-time coach that even if you do have a head, your schedules might be conflicting or have share different weight rooms, or they might be peers in a sense. And it's not that you can't learn from them, but it's very different, I think, when you're an intern and you come in and the coach that is probably running the program might have been in it for like 10, 15, 20 years. Like there's a very big difference between it versus like, hey, we're like 1 year removed from each other. So our experiences are already similar. We're both looking at the next job. Like, how do I get ready for that? So you have to like own your own self-development and go out, and there's a plethora of resources and conferences and coaches that are willing to kind of share. So just got to be open to do that and forthright and actually making that effort to learn and everything too. And yeah, like Coach Kaz has always been a great like speaker. I remember seeing him like way back. I don't even remember who he was at that point. He might have been a Baylor or something. Um, but yeah, we are the best at stealing and borrowing programs. But if you don't make it fit the context of like who you're working with, where you're at, and fit your system, like you're just stealing. And that's, I think a lot of young coaches like try to implement a very complicated program and don't really realize that it's not working. It's not working at all. So
Absolutely. I've seen like the memes. If you're familiar with Bradley Barbell on Instagram, has been a strength coach meme factory recently. But like one of them where you walk when you walk out and the intern is programmed 10 by 10 German volume training with hypertrophy clusters for men's tennis or something like that, and they're all just like laying on the ground. That the context matters, and you don't want to be in an echo chamber with your same peers. You maybe just like, oh, we've kind of got it all figured out, and we do these same three programs that we stole from someone who did it 20 years ago. Like you got to find out how it applies to you. So being open-minded in programming, to not just think, especially in my position, I don't think I'd be able to have any growth in this field if I thought I had it all understood in year three of being a full-time coach. It's like, all right, you got to figure it out. It's like you got to call on other people, and just expand your knowledge as much as you can.
definitely, yeah, just keep ever growing and like constantly evolving. That's what you got to do, especially when your time is limited and you're just running from team to team. You gotta make sure you command your own self-development and make sure you're progressing your own way. So that's awesome. Well, hey Colton, like any good train session, we got to end the show with a finisher. So
There we
I
go.
got I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and then we'll wrap it up with a little bit of overtime, probably just to put a cherry on top. But you can go rapid fire, but if there's anything you feel like you got to explain a little bit more of it, have at it.
Sounds good.
All right, first one I got for you. Biggest influence in the strength and conditioning profession.
Man, I might have to name three really quickly because of different contexts. But Stu Roche at Marquette, Jim Snyder at was around, and then in football would have been Jeff Eaton, who's now at Oregon State, with how like lead and run a room and everything with him and the whole Coach Feld staff when I was there. And then last one was Kenny O'Mary, who was here at William and Mary my first year, just helped me figure out a lot as a young coach.
Okay.
After that
Say
turned into 5 a.m.
say the who was the second one again? Because that one cut out for a second. I want to make sure that after Stu we let him know who
Yeah,
that one
it
was.
was Jim Snyder at Wisconsin in basketball. He's just learned a lot when I was there in a very short amount of time, and still use a lot of that in my programs.
Awesome. Yeah, those are great names. Obviously been in the profession for a while, so awesome mentors to kind of have and learn and grow from. So definitely good. Hey, so when you're not coaching, you're not competing, you're not getting ready for a new competition, you're outside of the weight room, like no games, like whatever's going on. What are some of your like hobbies that you enjoy doing outside of kind of the profession?
When I'm back in Wisconsin and there's snow in the winter, I go skiing from time to time. It's a little harder to do that in Virginia. I got to take a hike 3 hours over to the mountains from where I'm at. But around here, I'll either golf or disc golf is a little quicker of a game, a little harsher on your elbow if you're not throwing regularly, but something somewhat active to do.
All right, there you go. Hey, so if you weren't coaching, what do you think you might be doing if all was said and done and this was a different profession that you were involved in?
And well, it's got to be something where I'm on my feet and able to talk in front of people. So I'd probably be that old classic high school history teacher who coaches football or some other sport, doing still being able to be around a lot of young people and athletes throughout the day and trying to teach in some capacity.
Okay, that's a good combo right there. It was a little bit of classroom time, a little bit X's and O's out in the field. All right, so I don't know if you got any competitions coming up, but training related at all. What music is playing when you're getting ready for a big lift? And then what is like hands down best post-training meal?
It varies so much with my music. I'm kind of a wild card, but if I'm maxing out, it's probably going to be something along the lines of 3 Days Grace or Metallica, some sort of like harder rock or grunge. But then there's also times recently where it's been some country like Ella Langley's been climbing up the boards a lot lately, and how much that gets played even for maybe like a heavy squat session. And some reggae music has been really recent, just the opposite effect of kind of calming you down when you lift, especially with something like a heavy snatch or something like that. And then, man, with training in the morning, middle of the day, a lot of the times it ends up being beef and rice or turkey and rice post workout. But if it's a weekend and you got the time to go do it, I'd love to go get some breakfast food. Like you got the local restaurant in Williamsburg. I think it's the most pancake houses per capita or something like that in the United States. So you can go find all sorts of different breakfast foods and get your fritters and your scones and things like that would be really good after a tough workout.
Oh yeah, a good fritter after a heavy lift. That's not such a bad plan. Hey, so last one I got for you for overtime. What has been, and they might be the same, but what's been your favorite part of coaching and maybe favorite part of like Olympic weightlifting thus far in your career?
Coaching is so many really awesome high level people that I've gotten to meet and be around that rubs off on me at some point, helps me develop. Um, so just being able to surround myself with good people and keep a lot of those relationships. Some of them didn't expect at the time. You're interning and kind of going through it together, doing workouts together. 3:30 in the morning before a football session just to get it in, and then end up getting invited to a wedding later on down the road. Those are my favorite moments. And same in that regard with athletes as well. Maybe someone from a former school reaches out about something training related, and that's always really cool. Even more so than the day-to-day stuff is when someone wants to stop by your office and tell you about uh, maybe someone's come back from graduating 2 years ago and update you on your life or on their life. That's awesome. And then in weightlifting, it's almost the puzzle of trying to figure out how to fit it in with the job that I have. Because I've heard like it's very difficult to be both the best coach you can possibly be, and if you want to be a really high level athlete, that's usually a very hard balance to strike. Um, and I don't want that. Definitely can't subtract from the coaching side of it. So what can I what can I move around and talking with outside sources like a coach too, and still get the same effect with the weightlifting because I want to, as you had said to begin the meeting, I want to ride it till the wheels fall off and just see how strong can I possibly get with all the Olympic lifts. And then maybe someday you can catch me doing some zone two cardio or a 5K or something. But for at least the next several years, we're going to push this thing as far as we can go physically.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's definitely I think it's kind of addicting too, like when you have that schedule and it's like jam packed and you're like, where am I going to get the training session in? But it's also good time management skills and like preparedness on the front end to like if it's really important to you and like the training is and you want to compete, then you have to be really deliberate with where you put that in. But it is fun to like, I only got this amount of time, I got to do this. like I got to jam pack it in, and it's fun to like eventually like go out and compete, put everything on the table, and then realize like, man, I did all that on top of like a
Yeah,
crazy schedule.
that's a good
Uh,
feeling.
I know because I've always had the conversations with some guys, just like shooting the shit, like, man, it must be nice to like have like the weight room right by your office. I was like we talked about in the beginning, I was like, I mean, sometimes it's nice, but it's if you're trying to get ready and compete against all you guys that are really good, sometimes it's a big distraction. So like I feel pretty good like at the level I'm in, knowing that in spite of all the other stuff going on, I still got to be here and compete and see if we can refine it moving forward. So that's awesome, man. Well, definitely good things in the future for both coaching and like on the platform for you as well. So, I mean, for anybody that's got any follow-up questions, want to pick your brain on like maybe trying to figure out the best way to strike that balance or looking for a mentor or just kind of see what you guys have going on over at William and Mary, want to pop by for a visit and stuff like that. Where can they get a hold of you? Can they follow you as well?
Yeah, on the personal side, probably more active on Instagram. I post some of my coaching and competitive stuff on there, and I'll probably end up checking it daily. Otherwise, if it's more, stop by for a visit or something, that works too. Are interested in interning or anything of that sort. But I've also got my email, my school email on the staff directory, and some of my contact info listed. So pretty straightforward. I got email and Instagram. I don't think I have much else outside of that.
Hey, easy enough. Like if they can do the work to figure it out, we'll link everything in there. But I mean, if you're looking to intern, like start doing your own research. But I can't appreciate your time. I appreciate your time, Colton. It's been great to talk to you a little bit more and kind of also see where some of our mutual connections lie and like hopefully a lot of success for you guys for the remainder of the spring season and development season for a lot of your teams. But thanks for coming on today, man. It was good talking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nick. Appreciate you putting it together and reaching out and doing all the legwork for it. Got an awesome thing going on. I gotta go back and listen to some of the older podcasts you have now because I know a lot of the people and it's a cool collection of knowledge that you've been able to put together over the last couple of years.
Well, I appreciate it, and it's good to add you to the list. So thanks again, man. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, appreciate it, Nick.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.